Hi, I'm Dr. Jeremy Neal. I'm a professor of philosophy at Houston Baptist University. I want to talk today about John Rawls' principles of justice, which he thinks would be chosen in the original position. I've articulated before the nature of the original position, and so I want to focus today on the two principles of justice. The first principle of justice for Rawls is that each person is to have an equal basic right, an equal right to the most extensive total system of equal basic liberties, compatible with a similar system of liberty for all. And the second principle of justice is that social and economic inequalities are to be arranged so that they are both to the greatest benefit of the least advantaged and attached to offices and positions open to all under conditions of fair equality of opportunity. So, first of all, briefly to describe what these principles are, the first principle, the liberty principle, essentially says that we are supposed to have maximal basic liberties. Our rights are supposed to be as good as possible under whatever system of governance and social cooperation we live in outside of the veil of ignorance, outside of the original position. And the second principle of justice is just that we are to arrange the resource distributions in our society so that whatever resource distribution is chosen, it is such that the least well-off, or the persons who are least advantaged in the society, will be better off than they would otherwise be under any other possible distribution of resources. So the second principle, then, the difference principle, its aim is to ensure that whatever resource distribution system is chosen, it is just by virtue of the fact that it's doing the best that could possibly be done for those persons who are least advantaged in the society. Now, I want to make a couple of comments about the principles of justice and criticisms of them. But first of all, a quick thing about why Rawls thinks that these particular principles would be chosen. Rawls considers the possibility in Theory of Justice, his great magnum opus, that persons in the original position might choose utilitarian principles of social cooperation. Without getting into too much detail, utilitarian principles are principles which aim to ensure the welfare of the social whole. So a famous utilitarian maxim is the greatest good for the greatest number of persons. In other words, in a utilitarian system, it might be the case that some persons are benefited less than they would be under Rawls's system, as long as the overall social welfare is improved, as long as the greatest number of persons experience the greatest possible gain. Now, Rawls thinks that utilitarian principles would not be chosen in the original position because he thinks that the participants in the original position would be risk-averse rather than risk-takers. Notice that in the original position, the first principle of justice, the liberty principle that would be chosen, is in fact a principle that is in contrast, strong contrast to utilitarianism, because the liberty principle ensures that all persons have maximum rights. Most standard accounts of utilitarianism don't think that persons have rights. And so the liberty principle is an assertion against that persons do have such rights. And notice also that the second principle of justice that Rawls thinks would be chosen in the original position, the difference principle, is also in strong contrast to utilitarianism, because utilitarianism, at least on most of its versions, justifies the distribution of resources in any way possible so as to maximize the social good. So any resource distribution is possible if the greatest good of the greatest number is maximized, according to utilitarianism at least. But Rawls thinks that we ought not to maximize the greatest good for the greatest number. In his view, our aim in organizing the distribution of resources in our society ought rather to be to ensure that the least well-off, the least advantaged persons in the society are better off than they could otherwise be in any other possible resource distribution arrangement. Okay, now those are the two principles of justice. There are many criticisms that have been launched against the two principles of justice. I'm not going to get into all of them today, but I do want to discuss one quick criticism of these two principles of justice, and that is, why are we to assume that persons in the original position that Rawls describes would be risk-averse rather than risk-takers? So suppose you do not know your position in society socioeconomically. why are we to assume that you would be risk averse and would select principles of justice that protect you the most, supposing that you turn out on the other side of the original position in real life society to be at the bottom rung of the society? Why shouldn't we suppose that persons in the original position, unlike what Rawls says, might actually be risk takers, willing to gamble about the possibility of actually turning out on top in the society rather than on bottom? So why are we to suppose that they would be risk averse and select principles of justice that would in fact ensure that they are best off if they are the least advantaged persons in society? On a utilitarian account, they could, for instance, select principles of justice and social cooperation that might make them, worse off than they might be in a Rawlsian society, but might make them actually much better off than they are in a Rawlsian society, because a utilitarian account isn't aimed at ensuring the welfare of the least advantaged. It's rather aimed at ensuring that the prosperity of the social whole is privileged over any other potential social cooperation goal. Okay, so one criticism then of the original position is that it is not clear, certainly not to me, and it's not clear to many other philosophers too who have analyzed the original position, whether Rawls's two principles of justice would in fact be the principles that would be chosen. I am not sure at all that if I were situated in the original position, I would be risk averse rather than a risk taker. Many days of the week, maybe 3 or 4 days of the week, I would actually be a risk taker, I think, and I would be willing to gamble on my position in society if there were, in my judgment, a strong possibility that I might actually end up in a better socioeconomic rank or standard than I would otherwise do if I were situated in a Rawlsian society that is developed out of the original position. I'll articulate some other criticisms of the original position and the principles of justice on another day, but for now that's the basics of the two principles of justice and of one possible criticism of them.